what we have here is an I'm not really sure. The label is missing, but I have some suspicion that perhaps it is a Gulf Coast Dixie Belle. So until I learn of something different, I'm just gonna go with that. So yeah, this may or may not be one of the earliest forms of the Gulf Coast Dixie Belle. Okay, I'm not really sure if it's Halsey because, I mean, it doesn't have a speed coil for the lower speeds. It's just a 7 MFD capacitor. Okay, I'm thinking maybe it's King of Fans. I don't think it's air cool, but then again, who knows? Anyway, yeah, it's a chunky GE vent. Has a blade pitch of 12.5 degrees. Pretty big motor. It looks like a 188 inside, maybe 188 by 15, which makes me kind of think maybe it actually is a Dixie Belle. Arch end blades, which in and of themselves are actually pretty nice. The blades are walnut veneer plywood, which, again, nice. And yeah, it's chunk. Motor is stamped steel. For reference, that is the canopy. And yeah, so let's see what this mystery GE vent does. There's a little bit of hum to it. Now, actually, maybe it is a Halsey. Because I know that's who Murray Feiss used, and it has a similar kind of architecture to it. The low speed is a little faster than average. And with the 12.5 degree pitch, although it is somewhat average, it's still moving a fair amount of air just on the low. Let's see what medium does. Found this one at a Habacrap in Canton, Ohio, in my travels. I was with a friend. Friend went to Book World, which is their book section, and I went to the fans, of course. Both of us ended up with things. Yeah, the medium speed is a pretty average medium. I saw a chunky GE vent, arch end blades. I was like, alright, maybe I'll get this, if the price is right. And it was. So, away it went. Let's go to a high. Now, the Gulf Coast Dixie Belle has always been about performance. As far as I know, it has always had a 188mm motor. Alright. And it's been through a few forms. And the earliest form, one of the earliest forms, looked like this. So, But it's always been a performance-oriented fan. And this one is really no exception. I'd say high speed is about 180, maybe 185, perhaps 190. Something like that. So it's a decent performer, actually. Because, I mean, you gotta keep in mind the Emerson 1895 series and all of the residential Emersons of the 80s, even the 70s, had a 13-degree blade pitch. So 12 and a half isn't far off that. And those fans had stack motors. So not a terrible performer by any means. Now what makes me think it's not a Commander is because Commanders, I believe, were made by Aircool, at least with these GE vents. And Commanders are weird. So this one's not so weird. The ball socket canopy has a few more curves to it than your average ball socket canopy. But it's definitely not Sinlix because it doesn't look like their canopy. Their canopy is unique. So I don't know. It's definitely a decent performer. Decent, chunky performer. And arch-end blades are always somewhat unique, because your typical standard was just point tip during the 80s. Bearings are okay. A little bit of a whirl to them, but not stiff or anything. In terms of date, I'd say this thing's probably around 84 or 85. Judging by the chunky nature of it all. Now, one more test. For whatever reason, the reverse switch is upside down, but let's see what full-on acceleration from stop will do in reverse. And in reverse, it wobbles a bit. Love when that happens. It works fine in one direction, then when you try to do the opposite way, oh, wobbles. Interesting to note, the, updraft and downdraft, forward and reverse are both the same speed. Which means the motor was designed for reverse, not just a rehashed industrial motor. Because older residential fans, they just used repackaged industrial motors which had a directional speed bias. They were meant really to operate in one direction. Sure, you could operate in both, but one direction would be the proper speed and the other direction would be a bit slower. That's the way the motor is wound. So this one's symmetrical, so yay for that. Oh, the joys of fireworks. They need to be louder. And there you go, an unknown, possibly Gulf Coast Dixie Belle GE vent